Hello, this is Mrs. Brown, and today we're going to work on solving proportions. So first of all, what is a proportion? Proportion is an equation stating that two ratios are equivalent. So A over B equals C over D. Of course, B and D are not zero because they're in the denominator. And we actually have two methods of solving. You can use equivalent ratios. So if I have something like 3/5 equals mystery number over 30, since 5 goes into 30 easily 6 times, I can do 5 times 6 to do 30. So I do 3 times 6 to get 18, and the missing number is 18. So sometimes you can look at it and it's really easy to do equivalent ratios, and sometimes it's not. If I have this problem, 5 into 9, well, 5 doesn't go evenly into 9, so this isn't going to be an equivalent ratios. I'm going to use the second method, which is cross products. And what that says is this numerator times this denominator and this denominator times this numerator, so 5 times n equals 8 times 9, are equal to each other, and I can use that to solve it. So 8 times 9 is 72, and then I divide 72 by 5 to get 14.4. So I'm going to come out with a decimal. It's much easier to use cross products. And let's just kind of look and see how that works. So let's say I have 2/5, and an equivalent fraction would be 4/10. So if we look at the cross products, so this times this and this times this, notice I'm crossing in the middle, making an X. Okay. 2 times 10, does that equal 5 times 4? So you find that it does, in fact, 20 equals 20. And so the cross products of a proportion are always going to be equal. So we can use that when we're solving. Okay, so let's take a look at some examples of trying to find a missing number using a proportion. Okay, so let's say I have 4/15 and I'm looking for mystery number out of 45. Now, you may look at this problem and go like, oh, 15 goes into 45. So I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do times 3 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. So n equals 12. And that's great because that is correct. But let's say you didn't notice or you don't know that 15 goes into 45 3 times. So you're like, okay, well, I'm going to use cross products. So let's use cross products. Okay. If you know the method, then you can use your calculator to help you with some of the calculations. And it's really not that bad. So when I do cross products, I would say that 4 times 45 has to equal 15 times mystery number. So when I do 4 times 45, that's 180. And then when I go ahead and divide that by 15, okay, n is going to equal 12. Okay, so either way, I'm going to come out with the same answer. Again, it's going to be what's easiest. Cross products. This times this has to equal this times this. And whenever I do this, I still, after all these years, draw my arrows because then it's way less likely I'm going to mess up. So when I'm writing my equation, okay, 4 to 45 and 15 to n, if you draw that cross in the middle, it's a lot easier to make sure that you're doing the problem correctly. Let's take a look at another example. All right, so let's say I have 3/11 over 14 and then mystery number of the t. I don't know what it stands for. Okay. When I'm looking at this, 3 does not go evenly into 14. So it's not likely I can really easily use equivalent fractions. I mean, I could, but it's going to be way easier to use cross products. So since it's not I can do it like that, I'm probably going to have a decimal answer. I'm going to go ahead and use cross products. Again, this times this has to equal this times this. So in other words, 3 times mystery number has to equal 11 times 14. So to solve it, again, I'm going to start with 11 times 14, which is 154. The opposite of multiplying by 3 is dividing by 3. Again, this is where your calculator comes in handy. And when you divide this out, you get 51.33333 repeating. And so you would just say that that's approximately 51.3. Okay. Again, not something that would have been as easy to do using equivalent fractions. We could do it, but this would be a case where it's probably just easier to use cross products. Okay. Let's look at another example. Okay, let's say I have a kind of word problem. I'm not going to write out the whole word problem, but let's say I know that the cost of 5 pounds of apples is $14.99, and I want to know the cost of 2 pounds of those apples. Okay, so what do? I set up a proportion. Okay, the cost for 5 pounds, and I'm looking for 2 pounds, so pounds is in the denominator here, so what goes here? Pounds. Okay, and I don't know the cost yet, so I put N for mystery number. Now, again, I'm not really, it's not a super easy equivalent fraction. I could do it, but it's going to involve like a fractional part or decimals, since I can't go straight from here to here with a whole number. So I'm going to use cross products. And so I would say to myself that $14.99 times 2 has to equal 5 times N. Again, I'm going to multiply this out. I get $29.98 equals 5 times mystery number. I divide by 5 to figure out what my mystery number is, and I get 5.996. Now, it's money, so we don't go past the hundredths place. This tells me to round up. Well, if I round 9 up, that's to 10, which means I carry the 1, which means I round that up, which means, you know, that rounded up to that 10, so that would be 6. So basically, this is about $6 if I were rounding it. Okay? Because this makes this 10, which makes that 10, and yeah, so it just keeps going up. Okay? Again, taking this step by step, making sure that, you know, if money's on top here, money's on top here, pounds is here, pounds is here. If you have something funny like, you know, a dozen eggs, the cost of a dozen eggs, well, and then it asks you the cost of like 4 eggs. Well, you have to write that dozen as 12 eggs. So make sure that you're paying attention to that the units are matching, because if you're trying to do dozen versus like single eggs, that's not going to work. You have to do 12 eggs versus the number of eggs, that kind of thing. Okay. Let's look at one more example. Okay. Let's say I had something like 2/3 is equal to 18 over x plus 5, and I want to know what x is. Using proportions, cross products, okay, the same deal. Okay, so I would do 2 times x plus 5. Oh, look, it's my good friend, the distributive property. And 3 times 18. Okay, 3 times 18 is 54. And then at this point, you have to make a decision. Are you going to distribute the 2, or are you going to divide out by the 2? So if I distribute the 2, I get that problem. Okay, and I subtract, and I get 2. I subtract 10 from both sides, and I get 44 divided by 2. So x equals 22. If at this juncture I decided not to distribute, remember, this is 2 times this quantity, so I can divide this out by 2. So x plus 5 equals 27, and when I subtract 5 from both sides, I still end up with x equals 22. So you can solve it either way. Okay? I hope this helps, and have a fabulous day.